Hello, wrestling fans. Welcome to Pro Wrestling's Dirtiest Secrets here on Pro Wrestling 101. I'm your host, WWE fanboy Alex Cardinale. Welcome to the 2022 season premiere of WWE's Dirtiest Secrets. Now, we're going to talk about pro wrestling's dirtiest secrets as a whole as well. So, we're going to cover things outside of WWE as well here in the 2022 season. So, we've done 4 previous dirtiest secret episodes. We've talked about the Chris Benoit murder tragedy, the murder of himself and his family. We've talked about the Owen Hart death. We've talked about the Montreal screw job. And we've talked about the plane ride from hell. All of those episodes can be found on my YouTube channel, The Legendary Alex Cardinale. Just go to my Pro Wrestling 101 playlist and you'll be able to find them. Today, we are talking about the murder of a hardcore wrestling superstar and a hardcore wrestling legend, Bruiser Brody. Bruiser Brody was a very popular superstar in the 1980s. Future Hall of Famers and legends like Mick Foley, Terry Funk, and The Undertaker have said that Bruiser Brody had a big future in the world of professional wrestling. But unfortunately, Bruiser Brody's life was cut short as he was murdered in Puerto Rico in July of 1988. So, on today's episode of Pro Wrestling's Dirtiest Secrets, I am going to break down the murder of Bruiser Brody. And I'm also going to talk about Bruiser Brody's career a little bit. Bruiser Brody was a popular wrestler, but he definitely rubbed people the wrong way in the back of pro wrestling locker rooms because Bruiser Brody was hard to work with. He had a reputation of not wanting to put others over. He demanded more money, and he purposely injured other wrestlers in their matches, so he was not well liked by many of his peers. So I want to thank everyone that is watching this video, whether you're watching it live or the replay of today's video. I greatly appreciate your view. Feel free to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments. What do you think of Bruiser Brody's murder? What do you think of Bruiser Brody's reputation as someone that is hard to work with? Post your thoughts and opinions in the comments. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started and let's learn about Bruiser Brody. So, Bruiser Brody's real name is Frank Donald Godish. And Bruiser Brody was born on June 18th, 1946. And his real name again is Frank Donald Godish. Now, Frank Godish was an all-star football and basketball player at Warren High School, Michigan, and played football at West Texas A&M University, which was then known as West Texas State, and was 4 teams over 3 seasons in the TFL and the COFL. Prior to his wrestling career, Frank Godish worked as a sports writer in San Antonio, Texas. He was married on July 4th, he was married on June 4th, 1968 to Nola Marie Neese. The marriage ended in divorce on October 12th, 1970. Frank's second wife, New Zealander Barbara Smith, remained with him until his death in 1988. She has stated that while his wrestling persona was known for brutality and being uncontrollable, Brody was the complete opposite with his family. Brody and Smith lived in Texas. Together, they had a son named Jeffrey Dean, who was born on November 7th, 1980. So, after attending West Texas A&M and working as a sports writer, Frank Godish was trained to wrestle by Fritz von Erich. He first wrestled in Dallas, Fort Worth, and later Louisiana. He wrestled as Bruiser Brody and King Kong Brody. King Kong Brody was a name he used in Midwestern promotions out of respect for Dick the Bruiser. Frank competed as a freelancer in several companies, including the Central States Wrestling, CSW, Worldwide Wrestling Federation, which is now known as the WWE, Southwest Championship Wrestling, Windy City Wrestling, World Wrestling Council, Deep South Wrestling, Championship Wrestling from Florida, American Wrestling Association, and World Class Championship Wrestling in what would be known as WCW. In the United States, he had numerous feuds with the likes of Kamala, the Ugandan Giant, Abdul the Butcher, and Crusher Jerry Blackwell. In Japan, he was in a tag team with Stan Hansen. Brody had a reputation for refusing to job to other wrestlers. He also competed under the moniker of Red River Jack in Texas during an angle against Gary Hart's men and Skander Akbar's Army in World Class Championship Wrestling. Brody also competed as the Masked Martyr at one time in the AWA. In 1976, he went to Vince J. McMahon's WWF, where he challenged WWF champion Bruno Sammartino, but he was unsuccessful in winning the championship. Brody also teamed with Big John Studd. It was also in the WWF where he wrestled Invader One, Jose Gonzalez, for whom he refused to sell. Invader One, Jose Gonzalez, is going to be an important guy that we're going to talk about all throughout today's episode. In 1985, he had a very short stint with New Japan Pro Wrestling in a feud with Antonio Inoki, and many of their matches ended in no contest or disqualifications. In 1987, Brody began working primarily for the World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico after getting fired from New Japan. Brody continued his feud with Abdul the Butcher, as well as engaging in a feud with Carlos Colon. He briefly returned to All Japan Pro Wrestling to win his last NWA International Heavyweight Championship. On April 15th, 1988, the first attempt to form what became the Triple Crown Heavyweight Championship was done when Brody faced off against NWA United National and PWF champion Junichiro Teniru. The result was a double countout. Brody lost the title to Jumbo Tsuruta 4 days later. In WCCW in Texas, he was actually a babyface, most often against Abdul the Butcher. However, against Abdul in Montreal, he was a heel managed by Floyd Kretschmann. While there, Tim Killer Brooks acted as his brother, Buster Brody. Brody was in an ongoing feud with the Russian Brute, who later went on to AWA fame with manager Ox Baker. Due to his huge reputation in Japan, promoter Shohei Baba had the match taped and later aired on Japanese TV. So Bruiser Brody was popular not only in the United States of America, but he was also popular in Japan. And that was huge because now when Bruiser Brody was being booked for shows and events, he was an attraction and not just an independent wrestler. He was actually a attraction, and he got paid more for that. So he had a lot of money lining his pockets because of his fame and his rise to fame in Japan. In Florida, he beat Brian Blair for the Florida State Championship. Brody had an infamous cage match with Lex Luger in Florida on January 21st, 1981. Or excuse me, January 21st, 1987. Well, I keep making a lot of mistakes tonight. Sorry about that, folks. So the infamous cage match with Lex Luger happened in Florida on January 21st, 1987. In the middle of the match, Brody stopped working and stood around. Luger and Bill Alfonso, the referee of the match, were puzzled and attempted to speak to Brody, who did not respond. Luger and Alfonso decided to forego the planned finish of the match, and Alfonso disqualified Luger in a spot where Luger continually punched Brody in a corner and did not back off. After the match, Luger recalls asking Brody if he did anything wrong to upset him, to which Brody responded no, and Brody's reasons for not working were not very clear, stating that the match just wasn't working. So that was one of the infamous matches where Bruiser Brody decided not to work. Behind the scenes, Brody was very protective of his in-ring image, hardly ever agreeing to lose matches, and he built a reputation of being volatile. He would on occasion intentionally hit or hurt opponents during a match, contrary to the predetermined nature of professional wrestling. His in-ring work and wrestling persona earned him an induction in the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame, Southern Wrestling Hall of Fame, Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame, and then eventually he got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Bruiser Brody died in 1988 from stab wounds suffered backstage in a shower during a wrestling event in Puerto Rico. The killer was Jose Gonzalez, better known as Invader One. A jury acquitted Gonzalez of murder, ruling that Gonzalez killed Brody in self-defense. Key witnesses to the killing did not give testimony at Gonzalez's trial due to their summons only being received after the trial had concluded. Now, let's learn about Bruiser Brody's murder. So here is the murder of Bruiser Brody. So, on July 16th, 1988, Bruiser Brody was in the locker room before his scheduled match with Dan Spivey at Juan Ramon Labral Stadium in Boymon, a city near San Juan, Puerto Rico, when Jose Gonzalez, a fellow wrestler and booker, allegedly asked him to step into the shower area to discuss business. There was an argument between the two wrestlers, and a scuffle ensued inside the shower area. Due to the design of the dressing room, there were no witnesses to the altercation. However, two screams were heard, loud enough for the entire locker room to hear. Tony Atlas ran to the shower and saw Brody bent over and holding his stomach. Atlas then looked up at Gonzalez and saw him holding a knife. And Tony Atlas was good friends with Bruiser Brody. Just know that. Due to the heavy traffic outdoors and a large crowd in the stadium, it took paramedics close to an hour to reach Brody. When the paramedics arrived, Atlas helped carry Brody downstairs to the waiting ambulance, as due to Brody's size, paramedics were unable to lift him. He later died from his stab wounds. Gonzalez claimed self-defense and testified in his own defense. He was acquitted of murder in 1989. The prosecution witnesses living outside of Puerto Rico did not show up, claiming they had not received their summons until after the trial had ended. Fellow wrestlers Dutch Mantel and Tony Atlas have said that in the 1970s, when Brody and Gonzalez had wrestled each other, Brody had wrestled very roughly and beat up Gonzalez. S.D. Jones claims after one such match, Gonzalez said to him, "One day I'm going to kill that man." So here is more information on the murder. Gonzalez asked Brody to step in the locker room shower for a private conversation. Unbeknownst to Brody, Gonzalez held the knife hidden inside a towel in his right hand. No one knows what set it off, but Gonzalez stabbed Brody twice in the chest and tried to get at the big man again when wrestlers like TNT, better known as Savio Vega in the WWE, and Tony Atlas pulled him away. Brody lay bleeding on the shower floor for 30 minutes before an ambulance arrived, and then paramedics couldn't carry him to the ambulance. Atlas lifted Brody and helped him to the ambulance, and then he rode with him to the hospital. Atlas recalls Brody saying, "Don't drop me, brother," as the wrestler helped lift his fallen friend out of the ambulance. Atlas talked to Brody and slipped his shoes off as the wrestler desperately waited for medical attention, which was slow in arriving. Atlas said Brody had 2 8-inch cuts and his feet had turned blue. Stab wounds had punctured his liver, pierced his lung, and severed arteries to his heart. Atlas' patience grew thin while awaiting medical attention at the hospital, and he eventually grabbed a doctor who was walking down the hall. "I've got a patient for you," the wrestler said urgently. "I'll be with you in a minute," replied the physician. That's when the 6'3", 290-pound strongman commandeered the doctor to Brody's room. When the doctor asked Brody how he was doing, he replied, "I'm just waiting on you, brother," says Tony Atlas. At 4:30 a.m. the next day, Brody died. Jose Gonzalez told the jury that he feared for his life when talking to Brody that day. The 5'8" grappler weighed a stocky 250 pounds, but he gave up nearly a foot in height and 50 pounds to Brody. If a disagreement became physical, it wasn't a stretch to realize who'd likely end up on the losing side. Gonzalez never said why things became physical. The prevailing opinion has always been that their argument was over payoffs or a match finish. Brody had a habit of letting promoters and bookers know when he felt he wasn't being paid adequately or appropriately used. Additionally, due to his status as an attraction rather than a territory wrestler, Brody could and would hold up promoters for more money. Brody often refused to do jobs. He sometimes changed the finish of a match while the match was going on. Brody was not above shooting on his opponents during a match to send a message to another worker or to a promoter. And he was nomadic. He wouldn't hesitate to leave a territory without doing the honors for a local star on his way out. The killer of Bruiser Brody was never brought to justice. Jose Gonzalez stood trial for the murder, but was acquitted, largely because there were no prosecution witnesses. Subpoenas for Dutch Mantel and Tony Atlas had been issued before the trial, but they arrived in the mail after the jury had already reached its verdict. And that verdict was that Jose Gonzalez was an innocent man. So unfortunately for Bruiser Brody and his family, he did not get any justice for his murder. So Jose Gonzalez is a free man even to this day after all these years. So here are my thoughts on this dirtiest secret in professional wrestling. I think this is awful. I don't care if you are someone that has a bad reputation with your fellow professional wrestlers. You do not deserve to be killed. You do not deserve to be stabbed twice in the chest area in the showers of a locker room. You do not deserve to be treated like crap by a booker by the name of Jose Gonzalez. I really think Jose Gonzalez got away with murder because it happened in Puerto Rico where he lived. And I think this is a case that is flawed. I think that this was a setup, and I think they set it up perfectly, and they were able to take out Bruiser Brody, and Jose Gonzalez got away with it. Very, very sad. I feel bad for Brody's son and his wife. It's a very tragic case. And luckily, there has never, ever been another murder in professional wrestling, and hopefully there will never be one again. It's a shame to think what a career Bruiser Brody would have had if he went to the WWF in the 90s, the early 90s. I think Bruiser Brody would have made hardcore wrestling more famous than it is today. If Bruiser Brody had lived and gone to ECW in the 90s and then gone on to WWF in the late 90s, he would have had an amazing career. He would have been a world champion, and he could have been a great wrestler. He could have been one of the greatest of all time. But his life was taken away from him by Jose Gonzalez, unfortunately. A very, very sick Puerto Rican killed this man for God knows what reason. All right. So that is the end of the 2022 season premiere of WWE and Pro Wrestling's Dirtiest Secrets. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you learned a lot about the murder of Bruiser Brody. On the next episode of WWE's Dirtiest Secrets and Pro Wrestling's Dirtiest Secrets, I'm going to talk about the Heroes of Wrestling pay-per-view, which was a pay-per-view in the 90s that was themed to all the great legendary superstars of the 80s. It featured Yokozuna, it featured Jake the Snake Roberts, and many others. But because of how intoxicated Jake Roberts was, the main event for this pay-per-view had to be changed. Also, there was a change in color commentary. One of the legendary commentators was diagnosed with cancer prior to the start of this pay-per-view, and a whole new commentator team was added, but the commentary team was awful. So learn about the heroes of wrestling pay-per-view on the next episode of Pro Wrestling's Dirtiest Secrets. And our next pro wrestling pay per view pre show or premium event pre show takes place next Sunday. Next Sunday, May 8th, WrestleMania Backlash takes place. So join the WWE WrestleMania Backlash pre show next Sunday, May 8th, 2022, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Join me, WWE fanboy Alex Cardinale, as I make my predictions for WrestleMania Backlash next Sunday, May 8th, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. And wrestling fans, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, the legendary Alex Cardinale, for more wrestling content like the WrestleMania Backlash pre-show, the WrestleMania Backlash recap show, Pro Wrestling Dirtiest Secrets, and more. Have a great weekend, WWE fans. Tune into Monday Night Raw this Monday, Friday Night SmackDown next Friday, and I will see you on the WrestleMania Backlash pre-show. Have a great rest of your April and a great beginning to your May. Peace out, everybody. Sergeant Alex Cardinale here, inviting you to be a part of the inaugural Memorial Day 2022 Bash, hosted by me, Sergeant Alex Cardinale. The inaugural Memorial Day Bash airs live Monday, May 30th, 2022 at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on my YouTube channel, the legendary Alex Cardinale. The 2022 Memorial Day Bash is being hosted by me, Sergeant Alex Cardinale. And on the Memorial Day 2022 Bash, I will discuss the history of Memorial Day, and I will discuss why we celebrate Memorial Day. We're going to pay our respects to all the brave men and women out there fighting for us and this great country. USA! USA! Also on the inaugural Memorial Day Bash, I am going to address the veterans. Yes, that's right, Sergeant Alex Cardinale is going to address the veterans. We're also going to have a very special guest. That's right, we're going to have a very special guest. Former Army member James Anthony will be our very first guest for the first time ever on a holiday bash. That's going to be incredible. So we're going to speak to a former Army member as we pay our respects to the United States of America men and women who serve in our Army and in our military. There's also going to be an appearance by Chef Alex Cardinale, and Chef Alex is going to give you the best recipes to make for the veterans in your life. There'll also be an appearance by Aqua Alex, and Aqua Alex will talk about how fish tanks can help veterans. And if Chef Alex and Aqua Alex don't do the right thing, I'm going to have to put them in the camel clutch and the cobra clutch. Maggots! So the inaugural Memorial Day 2022 Bash goes down live Monday, May 30th, 2022, live 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on my YouTube channel, the legendary Alex Cardinale. Come join me as we pay our respects to the United States military men and women all those who serve, past or present. Don't be a maggot. Be there and be square, and let's pay respect to all the great military men and women. And that's an order. You're all dismissed.